Hello everybody, welcome to Sure Shot Archery. Anthony here, and today is the day that I review the Galaxy Bronze Star limbs. So I've been using these limbs for quite some time now from my original unboxing. Would have liked to do a review sooner, but a lot of things have come up. So let me get into some of the good points and some of the bad points of these limbs. Also, you can look forward to me shooting these limbs towards the end of the video so that you can get an idea on how they react and how they shoot. I'll be going through the limbs I got, the weights, what they're made out of, and of course the available options for you if you're looking to buy a set of Galaxy Bronze Star limbs. Okay, first let's start off with the good. The first thing that immediately sticks out to me is the price. The price is $80 or $79.99 US, at least at the making of this video. To me, and with my experience with these limbs, $80 for a set of wood core limbs is really nice. And not only that, they're well made. You're not getting really cheesy, cheap limbs. They seem to be put together very well. I've shot tons of shots. I've lost track of how many shots I've shot with these limbs, and I have had no issues so far. They feel great, and they seem to do exactly what they're made to do. Shoot arrows downrange when you release that string. Next up, as I just said, these are wood core or wood glass limbs. So they have a wood core, and then they are fiberglassed. I think the construction is very good for the price range. There's little things you can nitpick here and there, and I'll get into those when I get to some of the the negative parts of this limb. But other than that, as you can see, the layout of the wood and the limb, just how it's put together, it looks very looks very good. It looks very professionally done. And for the price, it seems to have really, great quality. Another huge bonus to these limbs is that they're ILF. So that means you can use them on any ILF bow out there. So you can use them on a Galaxy bow, or you can go and put them into your Hoyt bow, or into your Win bow. As long as your bow is an ILF bow, it's going to work. Now, it won't work on formula, because Hoyt does make formula bows, because they have a longer dovetail, but as long as the bow is ILF and the manufacturer should indicate that it's ILF, these limbs are going to fit in it without an issue. And that gives you a unbelievable amount of options, just to mess around with, just to try out. And since the limbs are so affordable, you really get to pick and choose what riser you want to stick them in, since they're ILF. Another nice thing that I liked about the limbs is just how they have them laid out. I like how the black finish on here, and then the logo, the Galaxy logo, is just stuck on top of that. It's nice and simple, but it does the trick. It indicates what limb you have, and I think it's a nice way to make the limb look classy, without making it look really like cheap and chintzy. They did a pretty good job of making it feel like you're getting a good value out of it. I know some of the lower priced limbs in this same area as the Bronze Star limbs, they really cheap out on like certain portions of it. Usually they'll make like a limb that's just straight up one color with barely any logos or designs on it. Very boring, very plain. It's nice that with the Galaxy Bronze Star limb here, you get that kind of professional feel, but you're not paying the $500 professional price. Of course, do they match up to say my MK Veracity limbs that are several $100s? No, but you know what? This is a great start. It's a fantastic start, and I would have been very happy to have this option available to me when I first started shooting. Now I just want to touch on what you can get with these limbs. What sizes and stuff do they come in? So they come in short, medium, and long. The ones I have here are mediums, which for me, as somebody that's 6 foot tall, are a little bit short. I really needed to go with the long ones, but that's all right. Weight-wise, you can order them in as low as 16 pounds all the way up to 40 pounds. So you get a really nice wide range of limb weights. Do they go as high as some of the high-end limbs? No, I know the MK limbs go up to like 46, 48 pounds. But then again, a whole nother price bracket and a kind of a whole, a different audience that they're catering towards there. But for these though, 16 to 40 pounds is a majority of the shooters out there, that you're going to meet on the range, at tournaments, or for that matter, it's going to be the weight that you are probably going to use for a fair amount, if not all, of your archery career. So it's great that they managed to provide such a wide range of weights at such an affordable price. So before we get into some of the little critiques I have for these limbs, I want to just go over who actually makes them. So Galaxy does not actually make these limbs. These limbs are rebranded, with the Galaxy brand on them. They're actually ordered from a company, well, they're imported from Korea. So I don't know exactly where they come from in Korea, or if they come from a region around where Korea is and they just get imported into Korea, get rebranded, and then sent out. That's not really my concern where they come from, as long as the quality's good. And so far the quality has been great. One of the companies that does make these limbs is Core Air, but there was also a lot of other companies listed that have played their part in mass producing limbs for manufacturers across the board, from your some of your name brands to a majority of the beginner and intermediate level priced equipment. So I just wanted to put that out there just in case anybody was curious. I don't have a ton of information on that, but I think it was worth noting. Okay, so now on to some of my critiques on these limbs. Now, if you saw in some of the close-ups, down by the dovetail, we do have some wearing. Some of this was testing on my part. This limb here I was messing around with. I was trying to adjust the limb bolts while the bow was strung and the limbs were under tension to see how the clear coat held up, to the force of the limb bolt, pretty much pulling on the clear coat, and it did fairly well. It did better than some of my, $300 or $400 limbs. So I am impressed with that. I definitely wouldn't recommend adjusting limb bolts or tiller or limb alignment or anything like that with the bow strung. You definitely want to de-string it. That way you can spare your limbs from getting ground down by that metal limb bolt. Other than that, these limbs have been clicked out of several bows now. My MKX10, I stuck with my Python. I've been shooting them on the Galaxy Crescent riser, and they haven't really worn. It's been really nice. They still look really good in the dovetail section, and I'm quite happy with that. Another little critique I have for these limbs are the information stickers on the back. It's really nice that they tell you, top limb, bottom limb, your approximated weight of the limbs depending on the size of your riser. It's nice that they put all that on the limbs to give you an idea about what you're going to pull. Of course, it's going to depend on your draw length too. And they also put on serial numbers so that they can track these. So if these do have a problem, or there seems to be an issue with the lot, the batch that they created, then they can do a recall or track to see what's going on with this particular batch. So that's very nice that is on there. The only problem I have with it is, and you can't see it on this one, but on this limb here, the sticker's actually coming up some, which is kind of a bummer, because at some point, and if I shoot in the rain, these are going to fall off because they are only stickers. They're not coated. Basically, it's just a paper sticker with adhesive on the back, and this information was just printed by a printer on top of it, which again, you know, it's kind of something you're going to expect. It's only an $80 limb, but at the same point in time, it is kind of a bummer, because it's nice to know which limb is your top limb and which limb is your bottom limb. And it's nice to have right on hand the serial number and the weight of the limb. So that's something that you know, as an owner, I'm going to have to write down, just in case these stickers in the future ever get you know, ripped off or damaged too much where I can't read the numbers. So just wanted to put that one out there, because I think it is an important point, especially if you're somebody that wants to keep track of, you know, your archery equipment, and you know, especially if you're trying to figure out, you know, if you should move up in weight, and you need to know how much your previous limbs were, because after you shoot a while, you do forget these things, because it's not something you think of every single day. Something else I would like to cover on these limbs is it's kind of a design element, but it's something you see with more affordable limbs, because they're making so many of these, because mass producing them is going to drive down the cost. Things get kind of like generically made. As you can see, the logos are both in the same direction. Even the wood glass and imported from Korea on the bottom down here, they're both in the same direction. Same thing with the back. On higher end limbs, generally the top limb will be like a mirror image of the bottom limb, and they'll rotate the things so that you read them, or so that they're displayed correctly, you know, depending on what pocket the limbs are in. I know it's it's a tiny little critique, but it's just one of those things that sticks out, you know, with the more affordable limbs. They don't polish out these little details, because, well, it's just not in the price. You're not paying for that ultra fine refinement. You're paying for a limb that's well made and that's going to do its job, and it looks decent. It looks fair. Another thing I did notice is that the stickers, especially on the silver, because it sticks out, or maybe it's more white, because it sticks out so much from the black background. There we go, black background. You can see there's some little chips in it and such. I guess what happened is before they, I guess, fully laminated or fully clear coated the limb, when they were putting the Galaxy stickers on, little pieces may have broken off, or they didn't come off from, I guess, the paper backing or whatever they had these stickers on. And when they laid them on the limb, they tore a little in just a few places, and I guess, you know, quality control's not going to be overly concerned with a graphic. Very minor, you know, I guess it's a very minor imperfection, and I honestly didn't notice it until really looking closely at the limbs. I'm looking at these limbs more for their performance than their aesthetics. If I want something that looks really nice and functions highly, then I'm going to have to pay a lot more money. For me, I would buy these limbs just based on how they perform. And we're going to get into that, because I'm going to shoot some arrows with them. But in short, they shoot great for the price they're at, and I would definitely purchase them myself. One other thing I want to cover for the, I guess, the bad side, or the critique of these limbs, is they do chip a little easier than the high-end ones, I found at least. I have at least one, you know, fairly reasonable chip in here when I can find it. But, oh, there it is. But basically, you know, like anything, you want to be careful with it. This isn't a piece of metal here where you can, you know, hit into something and it should be all right, and it should still be in good shape. I probably banged this a little bit on like a wood door or something walking out of my house. You know, not paying attention, of course, completely my fault, but it did cause the limb to chip fairly easily, because I've done it before with higher end limbs, you know, MK Veracity, which again is a very expensive limb compared to these. You can almost buy 10 of these with the cost of one of those. It's crazy, but they do hold up better than these more affordable limbs. I do just want to share that with you. It's not a big deal. Just be careful with your stuff and treat it well. You don't have to completely baby it, but again, it's depending on how responsible you want to be for your with your equipment will depend on how well it holds up. But at that point, you could just go and buy a new set every year. It's only $80. I know that could be a lot for some people, especially getting into archery. But for somebody like me, who spends thousands every year on archery equipment, $80 is great. It's actually fantastic. Okay, so we're down on the range now. Let's get to shooting these Galaxy Bronze Star limbs. Now, I'm shooting them out of my competition bow. That way, the arrows that I'm using, match up pretty well to the rest of the bow. They're not technically tuned to these limbs. These limbs are a little bit weak for these arrows, but you should get a pretty good feel at the overall, sound of the limbs and how they shoot. And I think you'll be pretty surprised at the price range and the results you get, from the limbs shooting. So let's shoot some arrows. So far, that first shot, really nice, smooth draw all the way up to anchoring the shot, and then at the release, it's nice and quick, and they react really well. And it's kind of surprising for a limb of this value. Again, man, they feel good, they feel consistent. Now, do they feel as good as my $600 or $700 limbs? No, there's still some level of refinement in the higher end limbs that a limb of this price range just can't match. But comparing it to other limbs in the market, like my first bow, where it had actual metal limbs, these are night and day compared to that. These limbs are so much better built than the limbs I was using in the past, 8 years ago or 10 years ago when I was really just starting to get into archery. These are very well made, and they react really well when you shoot that shot. Nice and fast, and just overall, I'm impressed. Alright, so you got to take a look at me shooting with these limbs. I think they shoot pretty great. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments section down below. I'll have links to these limbs at Lancaster Archery. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this review of the Galaxy Bronze Star limbs. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And as always, happy shooting. See you in the next video.